Welcome to the Urban League of Palm Beach County. The Urban League was founded in 1974 by a group of concerned citizens who wanted to bring the civil rights movement to Palm Beach County. Its purpose was to help African Americans and other minorities achieve social and economical equality. Today, we strive to help youth and families in our community become more successful. Throughout history, African Americans were always hated for their differences. These differences that we had no control over has gotten us killed. Are we really that different? Society has always treated us like we don't belong, as if we're inferior to everyone else. Just because someone has a lighter skin tone than someone else, are they supposedly better? With this vision, the Urban League takes personal responsibility to ensure every citizen within our community knows their history from which they have come from. Without the knowledge, we wouldn't know where we are headed in the future. We must know our history in order to be successful in life. This is very important, so that what has happened to us in the past never comes back to reality again. This vile act should not be resurrected from the history books, but instead it must stay in our history timeline to teach us, so we can better comprehend each other's issues. We all must work together to fix our racial and economical issues.
My parents migrated here from a small town in Georgia, Rochelle, Georgia. My father was a sharecropper, as were many others at that time. And he got tired of working for nothing, actually, because he said that you could work all year, and at the end of the year, you end up owing the man. And he just got tired of that one year and said, that's it. He and his brother, they kind of left Georgia in the middle of the night and decided that they weren't ever going to come back. Well, I was born and raised in West Palm Beach, Florida. Delray Beach Elementary is where I got my first elementary job teaching. I taught there and I loved it. It was such a nice, close-knit community here at that time. The core value of the neighborhood was what made it what it was. Like I said, it takes a village to raise a child. It really did. West Palm Beach really was like a village. And it was just it was a wonderful place to grow up, even though it was segregated. Because we had our own thriving community. We had our own doctors and lawyers, and we had our hospital, we had our own stores, we had everything, even with our school. Roosevelt High School, we were one of the best. And the neighborhood was different. When we would have the homecoming parade, people would turn out. Everybody in town stood, together. They pulled together. And so we had a life outside of the white community. So that's why it didn't impact us so much. As we got older, we kind of challenged the system. And there was a lot of segregation here. I mean, you had the black and white, colored white fountains. You couldn't drink out of either fountain. You couldn't get on the city bus unless you had to sit in the back. But I just remember when things came up in the black community, they would always say, well, Percy Lee, well, we'll go down to the Urban League and he can help. And from what I understood, that, if there was a family that was in need, they would help the family that was in need. They would get involved in anything that was coming up that would impact the black community. We stopped at a filling station and I just went, I had to go, and so I went into the restroom and all of a sudden I hear this knocking, bamming on the door, just bam, 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 bam. And I'm like, God, and I hear this, come out of there, nigger, come out of there, come out of there, nigger. And I'm like, so, I'm 18, I'm frightened. Because I've never experienced that going to the restroom in my hometown. But I came out and there was this huge, about 5 or 6 white men. And fortunately, my husband had a permit to carry a gun. That was the only thing that saved our lives that time. He just told me, go get in the car, they're not gonna bother you. And so forth, and we got in the car and we left. To me, what I really, because I'm an educator, I really want our young people to become self-educated about your society, your surroundings, and the impact that you have to make. As I tell my kids, too many people died to give you the right to be where you are. They died to give you the right to vote. They're not taking advantage of that, and that's discouraging. You got to vote. You got to get out there. You have to make a difference. You got to change things. We can't afford not to get out and vote.
That's true.
And bring somebody in the office that's going to impact our young people's lives, because really, our young people, especially our young black males, they are in jeopardy. And we cannot sit back and not do something to affect change.
My name is Tammy McDonald Anderson. I'm Vice President of Economic Empowerment. The changes in West Palm Beach today versus when I was a child growing up, we had businesses up and down the corridor of Tamarind Avenue. It was a thriving, bustling area, as well as Rosemary. You had a lot of black businesses, a lot of black folks that were self-sufficient. We didn't look outside our community. We provided for ourselves and for each other. On Rosemary Avenue, there was a black theater, there were dry cleaners, and there were very nice restaurants where the serving staff, the waiters and maitre d' and what have you, wore tuxedos, and they looked very nice, and there were nice places where people could go, and those just are not available anymore for the people in our community. Segregation in West Palm Beach back in the 60s and before actually benefited black people more than desegregation has as it relates to opportunity, it appears. Prior to desegregation, they didn't have a choice. So they had the businesses, they had created opportunities for themselves and others, whereas that's not as prevalent today. When people were given the opportunity to feel comfortable moving out of the inner city, they did that. So expansion into Royal Palm Beach, Wellington, and other places. So much of the capital, both in terms of financial resources and intellectual capital, moved west, moved out of the area. Any motivation or a lack of motivation in young people, their desire to try to help is lessened because they don't see the initiative on the part of many of the youth. Well, the Urban League is addressing those issues through advocacy and trying to assist in rights for youth. The Urban League has 18 programs and services that address things from youth issues to housing issues, economic issues, helping people to be able to save more of what they make, to get better jobs, and trying to help them to become more self-sustainable so that we can try to get back to the times of the past, if you will, so that they can have businesses and so that they can have a fighting chance. I think this is a great initiative here in working with our youth, and this is one of the kinds of opportunities that the Urban League is taking advantage of to try to make a difference and to change the things that have become negative into positives within the community. And I congratulate and commend our youth and you. Thank you.
I was born in Alabama, Clark County, a little town called Walker Springs. We migrated here in West Palm in 1959. It was for a better living. My father to make more money to support us. I never forget when I took my mom to vote for the first time. They had questions like, would you recite? They would give you some number of the Constitution. So I asked the lady, She will answer any question you have pertaining to the Constitution if you can just recite the preamble. She didn't have no idea what I was talking about. In the beginning, the whites took the best of the blacks and incorporated it into their society. But the blacks did just the opposite. They took the worst of the whites and they incorporated it into their lives. So from segregation, I would say the whites benefited the most. You want to know about black history? You go ask some white kid. Segregation has taken on a new fold. My son was a 16-year-old teenager. He was jumped by 5 white men. He was running from these men and something flew out the window. And it was a gun. He shot one of the men. Got to court. They had a record longer than me. The judge said they was innocent because they didn't get shot. Is that justice? Was that equal justice? No. My grandson told me, he said, Grandma, I have to live out there to keep from fighting. I pull my pants down. My ancestors been in this country. Last record I got is 1700. And we still quoting the same thing they was said back in the 1700s. We are hoping that America will someday be all these promises that it's made. Like Moses in the wilderness. They said 40 years to wean out all of the bad seeds. Maybe we're going to have 40 years for America. Langston Hughes said it best. Let America be America again. The land of the free and the brave.
I arrived here in February of 1988. Actually following my to-be wife. Coming down to South Florida, she got a job with Motorola. Worked at Motorola as a manufacturing engineering. And when that went up, I got a call from the head of the United Way and saying, would you like to run the Urban League of Palm Beach County? I left Motorola in September of 2001, started here at the Urban League February 2002. I originally said more than once that this was not a job for me. One reason being is that I didn't have any nonprofit experience other than volunteering at United Way. I raised a lot of money for United Way. I averaged about $300,000 to $400,000 a year as far as money raised for the United Way, of which the Urban League got some of that. But that was a time going past where the Urban League was suffering in the late 90s to the point where they could have closed the doors here, and I honestly feel that not too many people in the community would have cared. They would have closed the doors here, and somebody was saying a month later, I didn't see any lights at the Urban League lately. Well, they closed the doors 3 months ago. You didn't know that? I honestly feel that was the sentiment back then. This is our main facility, our Economic Empowerment Center. This is dealing with everything to do with housing. We have another site over on Tamron, right in front of Coleman Park Community Center, which we have our Community Empowerment Center, which has our digital learning zone there, our crime prevention programs, our urban youth employment programs, our food pantry, and it goes on and on. Then we have right down the street, we lease the building for our fiscal, administrative, and development, and urban youth empowerment. One of the things that I'm very proud of is that the building that we're in right now, our main facility, a year and a half ago, we were able to acquire the entire building. And there's a little history behind that because this building was built by Percy Lee and a lot of community residents back in the early 80s. This was land that was donated to the Urban League by the school district. And they built the building on the weekends, a lot of community input, a lot of plumbers, electricians, and masonry, and donated their time. I've heard that Percy cooked a lot of barbecue on the weekends and served a lot of cold beer, and in return for your services, and they built this building. But the dirt that we sat on was not ours. The school district couldn't give us the dirt because they weren't allowed to under law, because this is a public tax entity, the school district. So for 20-something years, we owned the building, but not the dirt. So through some maneuvering that I did, it took me almost 7 years to do this, where we had the city and the school district make a deal to swap land, and in there, they swap land all the time. A little parcel here, a little parcel there for an extra parking lot at the school or whatever. So I got the school district to add in a little parcel that we sat on right here into one of their deals. And it was so much in fine print that nobody even knew it was there. So after that was done, I went to the city that said, now I would like my land for my building. And they said, like, we have no idea what you're talking about. So essentially what it boiled down to is that we got to the city of West Palm Beach. They acquired our land they had it for about a year. And then finally, about a year and a half. And then finally we got through the motions that they donated it back to us. So we own the building and the land here. Back in 2003, I started acquiring property all through the Coleman Park area. And if you ever drive over to Palm Beach Lakes and you see these bright, colorful townhouses on the north side of the bridge, we built those units back in 2010. Those are 11 units, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units that we use for residential housing. We initially started this program to do a housing incubator where individuals or families that needed a place to live in a nice, safe environment, in a nice structure, we gave them housing. Right now we are 100% occupied with residents with a waiting list. We're looking to expand because that's phase 1. We've had that in place for 5 years now. We have phase 2 that's coming up, and that's a picture of phase 2 on the corner of Sapodillo and Palm Beach Lakes. That's going to be 2 4-bedroom units, which will round out that entire block. So we will finish that entire block. Going forward, we have plans that we would take other parcels all around that area and convert to affordable housing. And in the meantime, as we convert to affordable housing, we'll be changing the dynamics of that community, changing them totally. From blighted, rundown properties or vacant lots into nice, usable, affordable housing for individuals who are looking to better their position while they look to become a homeowner. Everything we do here is free of charge, and I have a good feeling that when you do a good job, people will come back. They will refer their friends and their neighbors and their family members to us, and that's how we're growing.
I am the bishop of the New Macedonian Missionary Church, Missionary Baptist Church, I probably should say that, in Riviera Beach. I'm also the mayor of the city of Riviera Beach, the same city where the church is. I remember at 12 years of age again, I was preaching in Shreveport, Louisiana. My mother made the wrong turn on a red light or something. The police officer said, follow us to the station. The civil rights law had just passed. I intentionally went to drink from a so-called white water fountain. Officer came out and pushed me away and said the civil rights law may have passed, but not here. Get that little colored boy away from the water fountain. I remember that very vividly. And I remember visiting my father in Alexandria, Louisiana, and blacks had to sit up in the balcony. Whites were down there. I refused to do that. I sat down on the floor with everyone else. And I think blacks were afraid that, oh, well, they're going to do something to that little black boy. But they didn't bother me. Hey, the civil rights laws had passed. I was going to test it. And I did. My dad said to me, boy, are you crazy? I said, well, Dad, I don't know. I guess maybe I am. I think it's important that we continue to challenge parents to get involved with the education of their children. The churches must get involved. The neighborhood must get involved. Is there more involvement now? Perhaps so. I think we have more young people staying in school now than dropping out. I don't really have statistics to say is this better now than whatever, but we do have in Riviera Beach, Suncoast. It's a magnet school. It is ranked from 6th to 7th, sometimes 8th. I think now somewhere around there, ranked, let's say the 8th ranked high school in the nation. That makes me feel very proud. My first experience here at the Urban League was meeting Mrs. Bowie and hearing her talk about the legacy. One of the things I will never forget, there was another guy I met called Art Bullard. Miss Bowie integrated the public swimming pool. When the integration law was passed, young people where blacks could not swim in the pool. And so Miss Bowie took a group of young kids down there. Art Bullard was very young. He served in one of the mayor's offices as a community liaison, whatever it may have been called. But anyway, Miss Bowie said to Art, he was about 15, 16, he said, boy, jump in the pool, we're gonna integrate it. And Art said, Miss Bowie, I can't swim. She said, well, you're gonna swim today, jump in the pool. And he jumped in the pool, couldn't swim. So having Mrs. Bowie tell me those kinds of stories were so inspirational. And then having the opportunity to work with Patrick Franklin over the years and seeing the commitment of the Urban League. You know, the Urban League is that organization, this community that's been there for our young people, that's been there for elders, that's been there for the undeserved and the unemployed. The programs that you all have, it's just been amazing. We've come a long ways, but we still have a long ways to go.
My name is Dan W. Calloway. I was born in Riviera, Florida, 1938, August 18th. Our city was named Kelsey City because of a nursery. When Singers Island, there wasn't no Singers Island. That was where the Black Beach was, over there where the Tierra Hotel. A man named Singer bought the land in MacArthur, John D. MacArthur. They bought all the land and started developing. And that's where in the middle 50s, around 54, we were moved up to Du Bois Beach up in Jupiter. We were no longer allowed to go over there. I grew up in Riviera playing in the streets with Burt Reynolds. His daddy was the assistant police chief in Riviera. Riviera is blacks on the west side of the track and the conchs. And the word conch comes from black blood from the Bahamas. That's what that means, just like that conch that we eat, the shellfish. Schools and everything was segregated until 1970, 71. And the Urban League has been a battle operation agency in Palm Beach County. I was the athletic director for the Urban League for maybe about 10, 12 years. It was easy for me to do that because that's my background. I would take, the Urban League would sponsor a trip like if I took them to Disney World, kids from different places. I would take them to the Miami Dolphin exhibition games, get the tickets and do things like that. I think kids need to experience things like that through the Urban League in other places. Show them, let them travel, and let them understand that West Palm, Riviera, Belgrade is not the world. The world is much bigger. When it really got organized, one of the most important things, they had the SPEEDY program. It's an acronym about the schools and the kids participating in the summertime. They go to school 4 hours a day in the morning and work 4 hours, and they get paid for a day. They found high school kids and college kids jobs. Because when I was in the sheriff's office, we hired over 100. All I had to do was place them at different places over the county. The ones who signed up from Belgrade, I signed them to the parks, the recreation centers, the ones in Riviera at now the Callaway Complex, but it's a Tate Gym and things like that. They don't have the jobs, the workforce that we had years ago. And every kid should have a job. I don't care What family? Because they need to understand the value of going to work and earning their own money. So therefore, when they become an adult, they'll understand of taking care of themselves. Now, my sociology teacher, by the name of Mr. S. Bruce McDonald, he taught me that in 1954. He taught us all, said West Palm Beach is not the world. You got to go and travel, and you be educated with that. And that's what a lot of us tried to do. And I think that we are failing because of the expense of doing that. But then, how much your life worth? The value of a life has really gone down. We don't put enough emphasis on saving the young people. The things that the Urban League was doing and doing now, if you didn't have that, we would really be in trouble.
My maternal grandmother was born in Exuma. She came over to the United States in the early 1900s, married a man from Nassau, Bahamas, who had already migrated here. The two of them were migrant workers, so they immediately moved to the Glades area. The 1928 hurricane occurred in September of 1928. They lost their entire family. All of their siblings died in that hurricane. They survived, and they left the Glades and went to West Palm Beach for a few months, which is where my mother was born, and then they moved back to Delray Beach with some of my father's family who was in Delray Beach and in Broward County. I was born in Boynton Beach, Bethesda Hospital in Delray Beach. I have seen tremendous change in terms of opportunities for African Americans. I have not necessarily seen African Americans take advantage of those opportunities. There are some people that I have noticed who may not have weathered the changes effectively, but for the most part, the changes have been positive. Segregation went out with a whimper. Not to say that there weren't any uprisings. One particular one that comes to mind is beach segregation. There was a time when Black people could not swim in the municipal beach. There were other areas of beaches that were designated for Black people to swim on. There are two schools of thought. Those who believe that the desegregation of schools is imperative. Then there's another school of thought who thinks that African American children got left out and got left behind when schools were desegregated, that they were getting a better education under a segregated school system. My opinion is sort of a hybrid of those two schools of thinking. Because when the schools were segregated, we had teachers who cared personally for the kids in the classes, and they went out of their way and found resources to use to educate those children. And they knew them personally and could tailor education to the learning patterns of each of those children. None of that is being done as much anymore for the African American children. None of us live in a segregated bubble. We all live with all of the cultures around us. And so it's important for us to begin our educational process right from the beginning in the company of the other cultures. The community as a group always got together and sat down with city leaders and found solutions, even if it took a little time, and in that case it took a little bit of time. But again, they found a resolution that did not require a lot of protesting or a lot of uprising. There were no building burnings or anything like that. We as a society have very much political freedom. The political systems have been set up to benefit those who know how to work them, and we play the game in order to work for change. You can't know there needs to be a change, and you can't know how to make a change unless you know what's actually happening. Personal freedoms are determined from within. It's a mindset, it's a decision that you make, and it's a way of life. I never growing up really understood what the Urban League stood for. Urban League was just sort of like a sound to me. I didn't really understand As I got older, I started to understand the Urban League is attempting to make everyone aware of what they can be and what they can achieve and what they can become. The Spady Museum is here to preserve primarily and to share secondarily the history of Black people in Palm Beach County. Up until 1995, when our nonprofit organization was formed, there were very few organizations, structured organizations in Palm Beach County that were collecting and preserving and sharing the history. The Black people who helped settle Palm Beach County and make a community here, their contributions are never forgotten.
I was born in Gadsden County, Florida. That's in a little town called Midway. I moved to Tallahassee when my daddy passed when I was in 7th grade, and graduated from Lincoln High School in Tallahassee, and attended Florida A&M University. I began in 1954. Urban League got started in 1971 in this county. And many of those first meetings for Urban League were started in my office from my board members who had an interest in helping us get an Urban League started in Palm Beach County. The T. Willard Fair was one of the people who came up and spent time with the steering committee and told them all of what the Urban League was about, how it operated, and its goals and activities. And Mr. Moultrie went to the national office in New York, and at that time they had completed all of the official documents and everything necessary, and Palm Beach County became the 102nd affiliate of the National Urban League in 1974. In community action, when I came aboard, we were so far behind many of the other community action agencies over the nation because we were late getting our funding. You know, we were working on process and lost out on some initial funding. So I was the fiscal assistant to the agency's director. We had about 5 people in our whole agency at the time. And I started seeking out additional funding for the agency. And we grew and worked on many things that were so necessary for this agency, mainly our youth employment. Employment was one of our major problems, which continues to be a problem in the minority community. Get our children prepared. We have to work on our family structures, our employment and restoration of our families so that our children will be ready for what's coming on the scene.